Hello. Looking here at two albums that I own. One that I got quite recently. I got this on was it Monday this week or Friday. Anyway, within the last week I got this. You can see both these are cracked. It's a shame, which is pretty common when you're buying secondhand stuff. That the front case is cracked. But it's not the biggest issue because that can be replaced quite easily, and as long as the disc is in good condition, then that's the main thing. But yes, you can see looking at Genesis, one of their albums, ABACAB, and a greatest hits collection. So not much, considering that Genesis has got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 studio albums, 6 live albums, and I'd say probably a handful of kind of compilations. Sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4 greatest hits. Okay, this is Turn It On. There's actually 2 Turn It Ons. Anyway, the reason why I'm showing these is, usually if I show a couple of albums of a band together, I've usually got more than just 2. But I've been listening to quite a lot of Genesis recently, mostly on Spotify or YouTube, because I was listening to a podcast, and on that podcast they were talking about progressive rock, and they were particularly talking about Marillion, which is a band that I'll say in the past tense, 'cause I've been listening to them a bit, and I've actually bought some of their stuff as well last week, but I'll talk about that later. But prior to that, I knew the name Marillion, and I knew they were a prog rock band, and they were English, or British, but didn't know any of their music. And Genesis I did know a bit more about, because I'd gone through a bit of a stage about 10 years ago of listening to Genesis, trying to kind of go through their whole back catalogue, listening to their Peter Gabriel era stuff. I already know, like most people know their stuff from the 80s and the early 90s that was played on the radio a lot, still played on the radio a lot now. But I wasn't that familiar with their stuff from the 70s. And so that was, about 2 weeks ago, I listened to that podcast, and that kind of got me, curious and I guess interested in trying to, sometimes when you listen to something or you see an interview with someone, and it kind of puts you in the mood of listening to that music, or kind of discovering more about that music. And so all I had at that point was the greatest hits. And this greatest hits collection, this really focuses on what you would imagine, their hits. Most of their hits, when they were selling a lot, were from their, I don't know what you would call that kind of music. Pop rock era, post Peter Gabriel era. So we got Turn It On, which is from Duke. That's a great song. It's like a really, catchy kind of pop rock song, but it's got definitely got a prog undertone. I especially like the drumming in that song. There's something very simple but complicated at the same time about the drumming. Invisible Touch, which for the longest time I thought was a Phil Collins solo song. I didn't realize that it was until, I don't know, in the last 5 years, maybe 10 years. When I was a kid, if you asked me, I'd definitely say that's a Phil Collins song. Mama. Now, Mama's from the album after ABACAB, which is, what is that album called? Did it say on here? Oh, Genesis. Okay, so it's self-titled. That's one that's got a yellow and black cover. I always associate Mama, that one there, yeah. I always associate Mama and Home by the Sea with that yellow and black color combination, because that's the cover of that album. Land of Confusion, which is from Invisible Touch, the album, which was quite a big song. If you've seen the video for that, it's where they're kind of they're portrayed as puppets from that British comedy sketch show in the 1980s. What was the name of it? We used to see it on TV here in New Zealand as well. I think there was actually a New Zealand version of it where they kind of had these caricatures of like politicians or celebrities, but they were quite grotesque. They kind of take the worst aspects of the person's physical appearance and really kind of emphasize those. So say if someone had a big chin, they would make the chin huge on the puppet, or like really squashed brow or something like that. Disturbed, I guess you'd call new metal act from the 2000s. I think they're still around today. They did a cover version of Land of Confusion, and I actually quite liked the cover version. Not usually a fan of Disturbed. Actually, I actually would say I don't like Disturbed. Most of the stuff I've heard, I've found to be quite. I don't know. I just don't like it. But I do like the cover of Land of Confusion. They also did a cover of Sound of Silence, which I didn't like that. But yeah, the cover of Land of Confusion is good, and the video especially is cool. It's done by Todd McFarlane, the guy who the creator of Spawn, and he's also done a lot of other kind of animation work for different things. I think he did also illustrated comics. He also did the Pearl Jam Do the Evolution video, if you've seen that. He's got a very recognizable animation style, Todd McFarlane. But yeah, if you watch the Land of Confusion one by Disturbed, it uses the character. You know how like Iron Maiden have got Eddie, the character Eddie, and Megadeth have got Vic Rattlehead. Well, Disturbed have got this guy who's got a black face with red eyes, and he wears a hood, and he kind of pops up in some of their album art and stuff, and it's kind of like their character or their mascot. Who's another band that's got kind of one of those? Is it only those two? Maybe. Anyway, I Can't Dance. And then we're getting to I Can't Dance. That's the early 90s. I think, yeah, that came out in 91. And that's by that time a lot of people had gone off. I think Invisible Touch is where they lost a lot of their kind of original prog fan base, even maybe before Invisible Touch. But certainly by Invisible Touch, they had really kind of got into the pop, straight ahead, straightforward rock genres of music. And by I Can't Dance, yeah, they were really very, very different from what they had been in the 70s or even in the early 80s. Follow You, Follow Me, that's from 78, and then there were three. That was after Steve Hackett left. I like that song as well. Hold On My Heart, yeah, so that sounds like almost like late era Phil Collins solo. It doesn't even sound like early 80s. This is kind of sounds like, where he got to, I think it was after. I've done a video on my Phil Collins discography, which I own most of. I actually got another one in the last month to add to my Phil Collins. But after, what's the one he did in 89? Another Day in Paradise? No, But Seriously. After But Seriously, and then he got to 93, he did both sides of the story, both sides. And by that, he had really gone into this ultra schmaltz. As whatever you want to say about Phil Collins' 80s output, at least it had some kind of drive and energy to it, and kind of some pop sensibility and catchiness and hooks. And I can understand why people didn't like it, absolutely. But by the time he got to the 90s, I think the wheels had really fallen off, and he was just producing this, I don't know, easy listening schmaltz, ballady schmaltz. And Hold On My Heart almost sounds like that. That's from 91, We Can't Dance as well. But yeah. ABACAB, which is from the album ABACAB. I like that song. I Know What I Like. That's from, we're going back there to England's Selling England by the Pound there. So that's where Peter Gabriel's on vocals. A lot of people consider Selling England by the Pound to be their best album and one of the best prog rock albums. It's maybe not the best prog rock albums because that covers so much, but I'd say of that British prog wave of the early to mid 70s, I'd say that, I know prog people are kind of, we consider them kind of be gatekeepers, and they're very, nose in the air about what they consider to be good or not good. But I've seen that on a lot of lists, and a lot of people talk about that Selling England by the Pound is one of the best prog albums. No Son of Mine, again, we're still in the early 90s. We're back to the early 90s there. I remember that being on TV a lot when I was a kid. They had a video for it. Tonight, Tonight, Tonight. That's from Invisible Touch. I actually like that song. That's not bad. That's got a kind of a kind of a dark instrumental undertone to that song. In Too Deep. Now, I was just saying that about Phil Collins's Schmaltz, and some people would say that is, but I really like that song, In Too Deep. There's something really, affecting about that song for me. And it is very cheesy. But I guess sometimes cheese can fall either way of the blade, as in some people write cheese off more automatically, but I don't know. I like some cheese. But too much cheese can be overpowering. Congo, that's from Calling All Stations, which I've got to admit, I've never heard anything beyond Congo from Calling All Stations. That was their last studio album in 1997. Jesus, He Knows Me, which was another big single from We Can't Dance. That's All from the Yellow and Black Genesis album. Misunderstanding from Duke. Throwing It All Away, that's an okay song. Invisible Touch's got a lot of singles on it, doesn't it? And then the last song on it, the Carpet Crawlers, which is from The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, which is a Peter Gabriel era, or was it 74? But this was, I think, re-recorded. Yes, it was, because it says 98 and from 1999. Was it just completely remixed? It was just the reason why I think it's re-recorded. I don't know the original version well enough. I've heard it before. I've listened through to The Lamb Lies Down a few times. But Peter Gabriel's vocal sounds like old Peter Gabriel. As when I mean old, I mean as Peter Gabriel in his older age, as opposed to his young vocal. His vocal went through quite a change. He had a much higher. He didn't have like a high falsetto or a high voice or anything, but I guess his voice just sounded more youthful in the 70s, and this one it doesn't. It's got kind of that much gravelier voice that he had developed in the 90s, and certainly by 1999 he had. It didn't sound. You could definitely hear the difference between that version and the original version. So I'm pretty sure it's a complete re-record, not just a remaster or a remix. So, if you like their 80s output, this is a decent compilation. If you are looking for stuff from their 70s, you would be better off buying the albums, because there's two songs. Doesn't have the song Duchess, which I think is one of their best. What year did Duke come out? Was Duke 1980? I think Duke was 1980. So I think I'm just having a look here. Hang on one second. Yes, Duke was 1980. So I think they might have actually been better just doing 19 from Duke onwards, because I think by Duke, or maybe even by then there were three that they kind of had, the sound had kind of got into a different kind of feeling, and I feel that those songs fit together well, whereas just throwing on a couple of songs from the Peter Gabriel era kind of feels out of place, and they'd be better off, I'd say, as a completely two separate greatest hits collections, or a double album or something like that. But I was saying, they didn't put Duchess on there, and Duchess, I think, is one of their best songs from the 80s. Maybe my favorite song from the 80s of Genesis. These are from all the album covers. That's from the yellow and black one I was talking about. That's from Duke. That's from, I think, Invisible Touch or I Can't Dance. Anyway, no, that's from Invisible Touch, and that's I Can't Dance, maybe. Anyway, the other one I got, because I'm running out of time here, is I got this secondhand for $2, just like I said in the last week, ABACAB. And I was pretty happy to find this because, like I said, I was on a Genesis kick at the time, as I kind of still am. And I was thinking, I want to buy some of their stuff. I don't have any other Genesis albums beyond their greatest hits collection. And so just by chance, I found this for $2. And this is this is not a remaster. I mean, a reissue or anything like this. This would be from, this came out in 81. I don't know if the CD was pressed in 81 or not, or issued in 81. Doesn't actually say. Oh, maybe it is, because it's got, usually if it's been two different dates, we have 80, actually I don't know. But ABACAB is a good album, it's this, you can hear the beginnings, or the early stages of that sound they're going to go on to develop with the self-titled album 83 and the An Invisible Touch in 86, whatever it was. And I know some people don't like that, but there they are. Rutherford, Collins, and Banks. But I think there's some good songs on it, and in general it's a good album. I like that CD design, kind of spiral or whatever you want to call that. So we got ABACAB the song, No Reply at All, Me and Sarah Jane, Keep It Dark, Dodo and Lurker, which is kind of split up, Who Done It, Man on the Corner, Like It or Not, and Another Record. I was also watching some of the live, Genesis went on tour. They did their final, farewell tour and like 2021, 2022. I think the last one was mid-2022, their last concert. And like his solo tours that he'd been doing, Phil Collins was seated through the whole concert. He couldn't stand, and his son was on drums, Nick Collins. And like it was the instrumentation was as good as it ever was, but yeah, his voice sounded very aged. I guess singing from a seated position is always going to be hard, and you can't kind of voice the way that you maybe would if you were standing up with your diaphragm fully, unencumbered. But yeah, I would hope that is it for them, because he didn't look like he was doing well. And I know I talked about this before about older guys going out on tour, but I think when it gets to the point where you can't even really walk on stage unaided, and you've got to sit. And I've said before, I feel sorry for Phil Collins, like in lots of different ways. And far be it from me to tell someone how to run their career, but yeah. Anyway, hopefully I can find some more stuff from Genesis. Thank you for watching.